So, today's lecture is going to be on industrialization. So, we're in Unit 4 and 5 still. This is lecture number 3 in the series. What we're going to be dealing with today is Unit 4, questions 12 through 16, and then 23 through 26, and then the industrialist chart. So, right under number 17 in Unit 4 is the industrialist chart. And we're also going to skip ahead just a little bit to Unit 5, question number 9. So, that's the only one you'll need to answer in Unit 5 today is question number 9. But I'll let you know when we're getting to that one. First thing, urban industry. So this idea of now cities are springing up and these cities are being backed up by industrial agencies, industrial factories. So steel, oil, railroads. They're these big central types of industry that are helping these cities grow. The idea that came out of this spawned off of Darwinism. So social Darwinism, so you just think Darwinism, that's survival of the fittest, is the slogan usually associated with that. Social Darwinism is this idea from Herbert Spencer, is that the survival of the fittest idea applies to social life too. So it's not just about biology, things like that. So it applies to social life. So why you're successful is because you are just smarter, you worked harder, you deserved it more. So this is their way of justifying how they became rich, how they're worth a lot of money now. So going along with that, or in contrast with that, you have the Gospel of Wealth, which was written by Andrew Carnegie, which is the guy to the right side of the page. So the Gospel of Wealth is basically an essay he wrote that was saying that the rich are responsible for giving back to the poor. So philanthropy. So that's an important word to know. So the idea of philanthropy is huge during this time because it's about the rich having a responsibility to help those less fortunate. And because they have all this money, they have that responsibility. That's number 13. So what's the Gospel of Wealth? So it's dealing with philanthropy for the rich to give to the poor. So inventions to help in this industrial age. So this is where we're going to skip ahead to Unit 5. So you can flip over to Unit 5 in your packets. Question number 9. So what new inventions made buildings such as the Chrysler Building possible? It's this idea of a steel skeleton. So before, buildings couldn't go very high because all the weight was put on these concrete walls. And the higher a building went up, the thicker these walls had to be. So it's just not very feasible to keep going up when these walls would be absolutely huge and basically waste of space. So a steel skeleton is stronger. They don't have to have these incredibly wide bases, so you can keep going up. So this is where you see the inventions of like skyscrapers and things like that, where you can put more people in one building and consolidate all your companies together. The forms of industry. So what are companies looking like during this time? So trust. So these are, just think, when you see trust, so what are they? Just huge businesses. So a lot of things are involved. A lot of people work for them. These huge corporations that are sort of bring together a lot of different industries. So these skyscrapers could hold different, in all the levels, they could hold different types of the companies. So you have the corporate in there. You could have the finance department. You could have actually what's being made. This idea of bringing everything together and making money off of that. It's still going along with number 15 in Unit 4. So why did business leaders form them? They wanted to improve organization because if you can get all these things together, all these things under one roof or just in one area, you can control them a lot better. The other thing that why they would form these is they were ability to control them, so you're still dealing with that organization thought, and it's an idea of limiting competition. So if we can have all these things together, it's going to be easier for us, it's going to be cheaper for us, and it's going to be easier for us to knock our competitors out of the market. So controlling the market is a huge thing for why they were formed. And then we're going to deal with horizontal and vertical integration. So for number 16, so what is the difference between these two? Horizontal integration is merging similar industries. So let's think paper. So paper, we're dealing with the paper industry. Horizontal integration is buying all of your competitors out. So this is like someone going and buying all the Staples, Office Depots, Office Max, all of those sort of big companies and making them into one. So then you control that aspect of the market. So you're controlling what people are buying and for how much. So it makes it easier and makes them have more control over the market. For vertical integration,
buying out your suppliers. So if we're still thinking about paper here, so you're going to own so we own all those, so we own Office Max or something like that. We're also going to own the paper mills that make the paper. We're going to own the place where we get the paper from. We're going to own all aspects of it. So it's buying out your suppliers. So you're not dependent on the prices of somebody you're buying it from. You have access to it. You control those prices. So you don't have to buy it from separate people. Okay. And the other thing here is how vertical integration stops competition as well. Is if you can control the suppliers, you can pretty much force your competition out of business because you control the prices. You can make them have to buy things for incredibly high amounts. Go ahead. So this is the chart. So under number 17 in Unit 4, there's the chart, and that's what we're going to be working on. We're going to go through it one by one. So Andrew Carnegie, that's the guy who we showed earlier on that slide. His industry is steel. So the steel industry is where he made his money. His business practice was vertical integration. So back to the notion of buying out all your competitors, or all your suppliers, excuse me. So buying all your suppliers and controlling all aspects and pushing people out of business. Charitable work for him, so he wrote the Gospel of Wealth, so he shows the responsibility for philanthropy, so the idea of charity. Also, one thing to remember with him is Carnegie Hall, which is up in the Northeast, and mainly it's dealing with a lot of the fine arts, so music, dance, all the fine arts. So he's really trying to sort of push those, or give people the ability to reach those things, even if they come from lower income areas. So really pushing the fine arts. Rockefeller. You want to remember oil. So his industry is definitely the oil industry. And a cool thing about Rockefeller, well, it could be cool, it could be sort of scary, but he is considered the richest person in history. So basically, if they brought everyone for what they were worth during their time, brought it up to current day dollars, he would be the richest person ever in the world. So more than the pharaohs, more than anyone else, he would be the richest person ever. And his business practice is horizontal integration. So he would buy out all of the other oil companies and control that part of the market. So he was controlling all the oil being sold and bought in that time. His charitable work is, he has the Rockefeller Foundation, which also is pushing fine arts and also touching on social issues, so sort of helping the poor. He tithe 10%, so it's this biblical term that means giving 10% of your income to a church or the church in general. So he tithed 10%, so that's a huge amount of money if this is the richest guy ever. And also, a cool thing about him was he used to give out nickels and dimes to pretty much anyone he would meet. So like little kids, oh, here's a nickel. Or even if he met someone really wealthy who was talking to him, he'd give them a dime. So it's basically his way of showing, yeah, I have a lot of money, I'm just sort of throwing money at people. It's not a big deal, I'm just giving it away. Vanderbilt, so he's a little different from the first two we talked about. Actually, he's a lot different. So his industry is railroads. So we're talking about during this era, industrialization is a huge time for railroads. So connecting the West and the East. His business practice was horizontal integration, so he's buying up all the other railroad companies and controlling that part of the market. And for charitable work, definitely a little more sketchy with Vanderbilt. So one thing you can mention that he did contribute to was, if you've ever heard of Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, obviously his name was why that was called Vanderbilt University, so he gave a lot of money to them. But he also had this famous slogan about charity, and he said, "The public be damned," which is basically his way of saying, screw the public, I work for my money, it's mine, I don't have to give it to anybody if I don't want to. So he definitely would not agree with Carnegie and the Gospel of Wealth. So J.P. Morgan is next. His industry would be finance. So you could put finance, maybe banking or investment. So those are sort of words that are associated with Morgan. You also, today, you still see the remnants of Morgan's company with JP or Morgan and Chase. You hear that name a lot during all these financial crises that have been occurring. You can skip over business practices for this one. And his charitable work is he did contribute a good bit to art and religion. So this is a common trend among these guys. They had a real passion for art and religion. And also, he helped finance a lot of the things during the Progressive era, which we'll talk about later. So he did help in the future. Not really one big thing associated with him right now. So the last slide here, so government involvement in legislation. So we're in the late 19th century, it's the late 1800s.
right before we hit the 1900s. Right before we hit the 1900s. So who did federal policies benefit in this era? So we're at number 23 here. So big business. It's incredibly simple. It benefited big business. So the government seeing industrialization, seeing all these big profits, they're going to make sure the politics, the policies are benefiting those who are making a lot of money and bringing money in. Then we're moving on to 24. So for 24, what policies were enacted by the federal government? So this is laissez-faire politics, or policies. So right below you see how to spell laissez-faire. So that would be the type of policies that were enacted to help big business. So laissez-faire. For number 25, so what is laissez-faire? So what does that even mean? Laissez-faire is free market. So let businesses, let people control things. So government stays out. Government limits regulations, so they're not allowed to really get involved. They want to let the market sort of decide what's going to happen. So the idea behind it is it's supposed to increase competition. If you cut down regulations, more people can get involved, more people can compete in the market. The problem with it is a lot of people took advantage of it, and because there weren't many regulations, individuals started using vertical and horizontal integration to control the market and basically create these monopolies or huge, terrible trusts that actually hurt people instead of creating competition. They lessen competition. And then for Sherman Antitrust Act, this is the main piece of legislation you want to know for this little lecture today. What it was supposed to do was limit trusts. So sort of try to control these trusts by prohibiting combinations of companies that restrict competition. So this idea of integration. So it's supposed to try to curb vertical and horizontal integration. What it actually did was, since these laissez-faire politics were going on right now, nobody was really enforcing it. So what it actually did was hurt labor unions. So you have all these businesses making huge profits, and they're taking advantage of their workers at this time. But what they applied the Sherman Antitrust Act to were labor unions, so groups who were fighting for workers' rights. It actually stopped them because they were labeled underneath the Antitrust Act as a cartel. So it limited their activity. So in the end, it hurt those who really needed it. So the laborers, the wage workers, and it helped. So who did it benefit? It helped big business in this case because it wasn't enforced, but it was meant to help the wage workers. So that is all for today.